All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our second evening community meeting regarding the fiscal year 2023-24 funding plan. So if this is your first time joining us, my name is Diane Sanchez, and I'm the lead outreach staff over the funding plan. I'm also joined today by the rest of our wonderful funding plan team, and you'll get to meet them as we continue the discussion in today's meeting. So before we get started, I'll go over a few logistics. First, this meeting is being recorded, and you'll be able to check out a copy of that recording as well as an attendee list on our meetings and workshops webpage in about 2 weeks. The materials for today's work group, like the agenda and slides, are also available on that webpage, and I will share a link in the chat shortly where you can check that out. So as I paste this link in the chat, I just want to let folks know that we were made aware that not everyone is able to copy and paste from the chat. And this might be due to a security feature that we have in our webinars. Unfortunately, we can't remove that feature, but what we will do for those who can't copy and paste, we'll make sure to follow up with an email right after this meeting or shortly after this meeting and send you all the links that we pasted today. So just want to let you all know. So for participation, we will be using the raised hand feature, and this will allow us to facilitate comments and questions. If unfortunately, sometimes there are Zoom disruptions, and if there's anything like that, especially any malicious intent, unfortunately, we'll have to end the meeting and reschedule for another day. And then lastly, again, for security reasons, we can't allow anonymous participants. So please make sure that your name is clear on the Zoom platform. And if you've called in, we'll make sure to adjust your phone number to just the last 4 digits, and we will call you based on those digits when you do raise your hand. All right, so now let's take a look at our meeting agreements for today. Next slide, please. All right, so for today's meeting, as we did with our first in this series, we're asking folks, not just participants, but also CARB staff to follow a set of meeting agreements. And so they're pretty straightforward. The first of this agreement is that we're going to be respectful. So we'll be kind to each other, and we really want to make sure that this is a space where everyone feels comfortable in sharing their opinions and their experiences. Next is take space and make space. So if you're usually someone who's quiet, challenge yourself to take up more space in this conversation. And if you usually talk a lot, let's be mindful to leave room for the quieter voices. Next is listen to understand. So let's just practice actively listening to each other. And then finally is when we're thinking of solutions, let's develop those with equity in mind. So equity is that idea that not everyone starts from the same place and that some might have unique advantages and barriers. So we definitely want to acknowledge those barriers that exist in some communities in order to tailor our solutions to those unique challenges. And so since today we're joined from folks all over California, each person's community is very unique in their barriers and advantages. And lastly, the different perspectives from all the interested parties here are very important in this conversation, but just a friendly reminder that today's focus for the meeting is on overcoming the barriers for community members as we face that transition to cleaner transportation in our state. And so at this point, I want to open it up to the audience really quick and see if there are any additional meeting agreements that you would all like to pose. And so if there are any additional meeting agreements that you would like us all to abide by during this meeting, please go ahead and raise your hand and we'll be happy to add those. All right, I'm not seeing any raised hands, so we'll go ahead and move on with these agreements. All right, so next slide, please. Okay, so now we'll take a quick look at our agenda. We're going to begin our work group today with a quick overview of our evening community meetings, as well as our Clean Transportation Incentives Funding Plan budget. Then we'll move into an overview on the long-term heavy-duty investment strategy workshop that we had earlier this month. And then the latter portion of agenda will be more of an open forum where we'll discuss heavy-duty investments as a whole, as well as the funding plan generally. And then we'll make sure to wrap up at 7 p.m. sharp. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to go over the goals of these community meetings, especially for folks who are here for the first time. So typically, the annual funding plan development process has resulted in many daytime public workshops on all of the different incentive projects. But we do recognize that our community members across the state have unique barriers to attending these meetings compared to folks who are in industry, government, or non-governmental organizations. So because of that, this year, CARB has been holding monthly community evening meetings to give community members an accessible way to engage with us. And the topics that we cover during these community evening meetings are the same topics that we discussed during the daytime funding plan work groups. And so on the screen, you can see the goals for our community meetings, which essentially include holding a space for our community voices and allowing their priorities to be heard, brainstorming solutions for their clean transportation needs, highlighting the most important funding plan information for community members, and just generally having that continuous communication between staff and the community. So we want everyone to feel welcome to attend any and all of the funding plan workshops, but we are designing this series of community evening meetings so that no one feels like they need to attend both the daytime or the evening. But that said, we are definitely happy to further dive into any of the content or slides that were presented in the daytime meetings. So if you do have specific questions on those, feel free to call that out when we open up for discussion. So now let's go ahead and jump into the budget. Next slide, please. All right, perfect. So this table shows CARB's budget for the fiscal year as adopted by the legislature. And so the proposed appropriations are as follows. First, a total of 80 million is allocated for purchase incentive equity programs, which is a decrease of 45 million as proposed in the May revision to the governor's budget, or the May revise. 60 million is allocated for sustainable community-based transportation and mobility equity projects. 80 million is allocated for zero-emission drayage trucks, which is a decrease of 85 million as proposed in the May revise, and nearly 29 million is allocated for the air quality improvement program. So please note that the 375 million in Prop 98 school bus funding was included in last year's fiscal year 2022-23 funding plan as a part of the 1.125 billion for school buses, but it's referenced here again because the legislature removed the 1.125 billion and instead appropriated the 375 million this year with a commitment to appropriate an additional 750 million in future years. Another note is that the 62 million for zero-emission transit buses was that was proposed in the May revise was ultimately not included in the adopted budget. But with that said, this brings us to about 624 million in allocated and proposed funding for this fiscal year. And in addition, I'd also like to mention that there is also complementary infrastructure funding through the California Energy Commission to support the zero emission drayage appropriations, as well as funding to support critical charging infrastructure. So with that, let's take a quick look at our funding plan development schedule before opening up for comments and questions. Next slide, please. All right, so here's the overall schedule for the funding plan development this year. So as you can see, over the course of the next several months, we're going to continue to hold these monthly evening community meetings, daytime work groups, as well as engaging with our community members and interested parties. Our second funding plan workshop will be held on Thursday, August 31st, and a draft plan is going to be released in late August, at least 10 days prior to that second funding plan workshop. Then the funding plan will be finalized in September, posted on our website in October for the 30-day public review period. And finally, we plan to present it to the CARB board in November. And of course, I always like to emphasize that beyond this set schedule for our evening meetings and workshops or work groups, we have that open door policy. And we encourage anyone and everyone to please meet with staff at any time. I will be dropping our contact email in the chat. And this is just one way that you can get in contact with us. But I also wanted to highlight that we've developed a survey for community members. And if you don't want to meet with us one-on-one, or if you don't want to just email us, you can also fill out that survey as a way of engaging with us and telling us about your needs. So I will talk a little bit more about that survey later on in the presentation, but I will also drop the link to that survey in the chat. And you can also find this on our funding plan, low carbon transportation incentives main page. So now with that funding plan framework and budget and process in mind, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. So next slide, please. And Dorji, I'll hand it off to you to facilitate questions.
Ashley Garrity, your line has been unmuted. Feel free to speak. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
Great. Yes. Hi. Thank you. This is Ashley Garrity with the Greenlining Institute. And I just am wondering about the budget breakdown that you showed. There is 80 million for CARB for zero emission vehicle drayage. And then I know in the past that you've been kind of talking about the 85 million that is for CEC. Do you have any idea of how those breakdowns are going to be and which programs they're going to? Because I believe that the 80 million is supposed to all go to HVIP. Wanted to hear confirmation on that. And then do you know what the allocations are directed towards CEC for that 85 million?
Hi, Ashley. Matt Williams here. I'm the HVIP staff lead. Just to confirm on the first one that yes, the 80 million that is allocated to CARB for zero emission drayage is specifically for HVIP, so it will be implemented through HVIP. I don't have details on the CEC allocation for zero emission drayage infrastructure, but I can check on that and get back to you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley. All right, not seeing any more questions, so we'll go ahead and continue on to our next section. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to provide an update on CARB's long-term heavy-duty investment strategy. And so for that, I will call Matt to the floor. It's all yours, Matt.
I feel like I was just here. Thank you, Diane.
I know.
Good to see everyone. Thank you all for coming. So these slides that you're going to see today are adapted from a work group that we had last week on July 12th. This is our first work group for the heavy duty investment strategy, and we do anticipate having a second work group to go over more material with our stakeholders. The real purpose of this work group was to share some of our initial analyses into updating this annual document and get feedback from our stakeholders on the content of those analyses, where we are in the work that we're doing, and any other pointers for how we can improve the strategy. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So the heavy duty investment strategy serves as CARB's long-term investment strategy for clean transportation incentives. It covers 3 years of funding and it is updated annually. The strategy serves as a roadmap showing how state investments can help spark private sector investment and create partnerships necessary to support the transformation of the heavy-duty on- and off-road sectors. It identifies key priority areas for investment that will help to ensure a smooth and continued transformation in the heavy-duty space. Each year, the heavy-duty investment strategy document includes several key elements, which include an updated discussion of the beachhead strategy, which we'll describe a little later, and how it helps to inform the extension of technologies to adjacent markets, updates on the current status of the advanced heavy-duty vehicle and equipment technologies that we study, a further discussion of market readiness indicators, additional ways to report on the metrics of investment success, new examples of what's happening in the industry by means of a series of mini case studies, an updated 3-year set of recommendations for heavy-duty vehicle and off-road investments, the ways CARB is focusing investments on the communities and small businesses in greatest need of assistance, and an annual report on the progress we've made towards cleaning up the state's school bus fleet. Next slide, please. CARB's investments support advanced technologies across the commercialization pathway, providing a way for the transformation of heavy-duty projects to help meet our air quality and climate goals. This graphic provides an example of how incentive funding has enabled that to happen. The AQIP funds projects all the way from pre-commercial demonstrations through financing assistance for fleets. The Low Carbon Transportation Program also funds projects from early commercial demonstration phase through pilots and early commercialization. HVIP and CORE play a key role providing a bridge between early commercial deployment and market scale adoption. Programs like Volkswagen Mitigation Trust also fund broad purchase incentives and fleet turnover, as do Carl Moyer, AB 617, and Farmer. CARB uses a variety of metrics to track the progress of different vehicle and equipment technologies and vocations as they move through these incentive programs. Next slide. The heavy-duty investment strategy works to define the outcomes that successful investments should strive to achieve. Metrics developed for the strategy can be grouped into 3 broader categories: creating healthy communities, supporting technology evolution, and growing the green economy. This initial set of metrics is built on the data from CARB's successful HVIP and CORE programs, whose funding has helped to provide the benefits enumerated here, which include the deployment of more than 56% of vouchers in disadvantaged communities, support to smaller public fleets at 41%, directly leading to or supporting more than 15,000 jobs, and more than 345 million cleaner vehicle miles traveled. The HVIP and CORE catalogs have grown from just 4 manufacturers when HVIP started in 2010 to almost 70 manufacturers between the 2 programs, providing 320 different vehicle and equipment models today. In that time, the 11,000 clean on and off-road clean heavy-duty vehicles have spurred the investment of almost $3.5 billion from other public and private sources. That's more than $3 for every $1 of voucher investment. In addition, as additional incentive project data becomes available, we plan to add it in order to have a more robust data set for when we're updating these metrics. Tracking these metrics is also becoming increasingly important as our heavy-duty investments are geared toward equitable investments in priority populations and small businesses. Some new metrics we're working on is examining who incentives like HVIP are serving and what share of incentives are benefiting disadvantaged business enterprises. Next slide. Earlier, I mentioned our beachhead strategy, a foundation of the heavy-duty investment strategy. The success of CARB's heavy-duty programs builds on one of the primary guiding principles directing the priorities in the strategy, which is the concept of beachheads, or the pathway for technology transfer and advancement. These are first success applications that provide a path for the transfer and extension of the technology to additional vehicle applications in subsequent markets. The initial applications in the beachhead are those that can make the best early use of a technology that can then extend to adjacent markets or applications that share similar powertrains, common components, and supply chain volumes. This example shows the zero emission pathway. Its success has centered on the first applications in the zero emission transit bus market and shows how, even with a relatively small initial volume, it formed the basis for a successful first marketplace and a stepping stone for additional uses of the same core technologies and architectures. Similarly, zero-emission technologies initially developed for forklifts and terminal tractors have spilled forward into ag equipment and even heavy rail in recent years. Next slide. Monitoring the status of key technologies is imperative to maintain the effectiveness of the investment strategy and track progress against goals. With input from grantees and from industry stakeholders, CARB conducts an annual high-level snapshot review to assess the generalized status and progress of key technologies to provide valuable directional guidance on where important technology platforms are in terms of technology readiness for the market. This assessment only looks at factors related to technology readiness and complements the market readiness indicators, things like infrastructure availability or cost parity, which we'll discuss later. Next slide. This year, we are removing from technology assessment those platforms that have consistently achieved a technology readiness level of 8 or above, meaning they're fully commercial. With this year, that means all on-road battery electric platforms will not be scored because all have consistently achieved commercial technology readiness. Next slide. This example shows this year's assessment of technology status for battery electric cargo handling equipment. The yellow circles show the technology readiness level for each equipment category last year, and the blue triangle shows where we measure those technology applications to be this year. The top 3 categories are new this year. So you can see the progress that has been made between last year, and this annual update of our technology assessments is really important for understanding what technology platforms are moving fast, which ones are moving slower, where we need to direct more of our investments. Next slide. While technology status snapshots provide an assessment of the level of advancement for emerging technologies, this can make for an incomplete picture. Market and economic factors can hold back what would otherwise be a technologically advanced, commercially viable platform. Being an important factor to investment policy, last year's strategy introduced a new analysis of market readiness. In this analysis, we assess commercially mature technologies against 6 market readiness indicators. These market readiness indicators include production capacity, which assesses whether sufficient commercial production exists, cost parity, evaluating the total cost of ownership or TCO of these zero emission technologies and how that compares with traditional internal combustion alternatives, both with and without incentives, duty cycle applicability, assessing the ability of the technology to meet range, payload, and power requirements of common duty cycles for each application. Infrastructure, evaluating the availability and ease of appropriate charging or refueling infrastructure. And workforce and service networks, evaluating whether or not technicians capable of servicing these technologies are readily available. In addition to updating our analysis this year, we're also considering adding a 7th indicator on supply chain. Supply chain disruptions continue post-pandemic, impacting all kinds of manufacturing and construction, including that related to heavy-duty zero-emission vehicles. As we walk through the established MRIs, the market readiness indicators, we'll be looking for your input on if and how this 7th market readiness indicator might fit in. Next slide. We're still early in the process of updating our market readiness analysis for this year, but this figure shows the results of last year's analysis of on-road battery electric vehicles. For each vehicle category on the left, estimated scores are assembled for each of the 6 market readiness indicators. Some vocations are more market ready, meaning they have fewer or lesser barriers to widespread market adoption than others. We expect many of these scores to improve this year, though certain indicators like service networks and infrastructure continue to be a challenge for many vehicle categories. Next slide. Each year, we provide a number of industry examples or mini case studies in the heavy-duty investment strategy. These are short, concise examples that showcase advances in technology and industry or government success. Last year's industry examples highlighted zero-emission vehicle driver satisfaction and health benefits, rapid expansion of off-road zero-emission vehicle models, and novel ways of getting zero-emission trucks into the hands of small fleets, among other things. This year, we'd like to extend our small and priority fleet focus to industry examples to highlight the work being done by CARB and its partners, recent successes, and promising initiatives. Some of those are listed here. Next slide, please. A principal product of the heavy-duty investment strategy, the 3-year investment priorities table details our recommendations for low-carbon transportation investments beginning next fiscal year and organized by technology stage, those being demonstration, pilot, and commercial. With a new fiscal year now added to the table for fiscal year 2026-27, staff has worked with internal experts and industry advisors to develop proposed technology category priorities. Estimated investment levels needed to sustain progress toward full market transformation goals will be developed later. We also made a couple of updates for the fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26 columns. Some priorities guiding this year's update include continued expansion of successful beachheads and pathways, including more off-road segments and more demanding duty cycles for on-road segments, funding larger scale transformative deployments, reducing market barriers such as limited production capacity, nascent service networks, and fueling infrastructure, and ensuring equitable access to and disbursement of public funds. I'll give you some time to look over the new 3rd year while I point out some of the changes we've made. We've split zero emission aviation into light, which includes autonomous and small passenger aircraft on short routes, while heavy includes larger aircraft operating further than a few hundred miles per day. Emergency and heavy specialty equipment has been added to the demonstration category, showing a shift from common technology applications to lower volume equipment, and a similar story with EPTOs, or electric power takeoff units. We're also considering breaking up the zero emission long haul into battery electric vehicle and fuel cell electric to allow for more strategic support. We'd love to get your thoughts on our proposed fiscal year 26-27 priorities and the other changes I mentioned, or hear from you on anything we might have missed. But that concludes my portion of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Oh, I am hidden. Here we go. All right. So before we go to comments and questions, I did want to follow up with, I believe it was Miss Ashley Garrity. She had a question. So I'm going to have Grace answer her question, and then we'll go ahead and open up to the raised hands.
Hi, Ashley. Yeah, we just wanted to follow up on your question regarding the CEC funding. So I just want to confirm that the 80 million for zero emission drayage through HVIP for CARB is it's also complemented by the 85 million for CEC to support the zero emission charging and hydrogen fueling infrastructure. But the budget language doesn't point to a specific program through the CEC. It just mentions CEC to be a recipient of that funding. So hope that answers your question.
Perfect. Thank you, Grace. All right. Well, thank you again for that really excellent overview, Matt. And I think it looks like there's a few folks who want to answer or who want to ask some questions. So I'm going to pass it on to Dorji to facilitate some questions.
Before anyone starts to, or before I call on anyone, I'd like to remind people that if you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please use the webinar feature to raise your hand. For those using Zoom online, please click the raise hand option on the Zoom navigation bar under the participants tab. For those using Zoom on a mobile application, please click on the raise hand option on the more tab. For those who are participating by telephone, please be sure to press #2 and we will call on you accordingly. Sue Dexter, you are being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and your affiliation.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Sue Dexter. I'm with USC Metrans. And I'm a researcher. And one of the things that I have to ask about is, you know, when we're talking about the electricity and all that, you know, plugging into the grid, we have a pretty clean grid here in California. That's great, but we could do a lot better. So is the ZE facilities and all of that, is there working with the California Public Utility Commission and all that is there funding to make it even greener? Because we'll only get the benefits if we have a really green electric grid for plug-in type of vehicles. And then also for that, I'm concerned about the building of the hydrogen facilities. And if they're not green, then we're going to have a problem. So, so pretty much I'm an infrastructure type of person. That's where I'm seeing where we really need to be focusing money into those particular things to make it available for folks to use these vehicles, especially on the truck, drayage, and other Class 8 vehicles. Thank you. Can you respond to that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sue, for that question. That's a great one. So I'll answer in two different ways. The first is one of the guiding principles for all of our investments, which is collaboration, whether it's in a demonstration project, a pilot project, or our broader commercial incentives like HVIP and CORE. We're always looking for opportunities to leverage our incentives with other resources that are available. So we work very closely with California Utilities, the Public Utilities Commission, and the Energy Commission to make sure that our investments into vehicles are being complemented by investments into infrastructure. The second part of my answer is about what is represented by zero emission facilities in this table, in the table that you saw, the priorities table. So that is really in building out ecosystems. So that is more than just the vehicles. Those are projects that involve multimodal facilities, lots of different types of equipment, infrastructure for all different sizes of equipment, as well as innovative solutions like on-site battery storage or on-site generation, things like that. We're always looking to improve not just the efficiency of the transportation sector, but also its reliability.
Thank you.
Meg Shumway, your line has been unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
This is Megan Shumway, and my affiliation with this is with Climate Health Now. And I have a couple of questions. The first one is, I noticed that there's money in the CEC for school buses, and you seem to also have it. Is this going to be, is the state going to create a single website for accessing or applying for funds? And, you know, can it also include federal funding? Is that being done at all, or is that anywhere in the pipeline, so that people don't have to go to different places to get money? And then the second question, is there a way you prioritize small businesses over larger businesses? I think of like corporate long haul trucks versus a guy who might have one or two long haul trucks. And is there a way to start posting in a place that the small business owner might see it, you know, like maybe at a warehouse or at warehouses or wherever they haul to, you know, so that they know about these programs, and that they may be actually useful to them, because they may say, oh, that's not for me, I don't have that kind of money. But if they can see that it could be useful to them in some kind of advertisement, that they'd be able to also participate more fully.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will answer your second question first, and then pass it off to my colleague to answer your first question. So regarding the second, we are really signaling that we want to focus our investments on the fleets, on the small businesses that need it most. So that means a couple of things. That means not only are we making sure that those incentives are prioritized for and available to those priority fleets and businesses, and that the incentive amounts are appropriate given their barriers to adoption, but also increasing our outreach activities. So we know that there's a large number of these small fleets down to owner operators. They are not generally the ones who are able to, be on our subscription list and show up to these meetings. So we are working with our partners around the state and CBOs to get out into the community, do a lot of outreach with these people, make sure they're aware of the programs that are available. And beyond just like having the incentives available and making sure that fleets know about them, we're also creating these wraparound services to help fleets that need it do this whole implementation. So we recently launched what's called Cal Fleet Advisor. It's a fantastic tool, and I recommend that everyone look it up. calfleetadvisor.org, and it is a no-cost service to help fleets figure out what their zero emission plan would look like, how to get zero emission trucks into their fleet, what kind of infrastructure they're going to need, who they need to talk to, who their utility is, what incentives are going to be available both on the infrastructure and the vehicle side, and then get them connected with resources to make things easier. And thank you, April, for putting that in the chat.
Hi, Megan, this is Grace. Just to answer your other question about the CEC funding for school buses. So typically the funding that's appropriated to CEC is for infrastructure. And so the appropriation that was made to CEC for this year for school buses is to support school bus infrastructure type projects. So usually CARB handles the funding for the vehicles, and CEC typically provides the funding for the infrastructure. And we do our best to coordinate, with our sister agencies and make sure the funds are complementary. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and actually just to provide a little more context. So we are working closely with CEC for, as Grace said, we are providing funding for the vehicles themselves, the school buses, and CEC is providing funding for the infrastructure. So we are going to be we're working currently with CEC to provide a single application for both the vehicle and the infrastructure funding. This way, kind of like you said, you don't have to go to various different places to get information. We're basically going to have one application to help you assist throughout the entire application process and for the funding as well.
And is this going to be over all 3 years for both organizations, the CEC and CARB?
Yes, we are working together for all 3 of the years. Currently, we're only allocated the 1 year at this point in time, but if we do receive the additional funding for the next 2 fiscal years, and yes, the same will apply for both.
All right, thank you all.
Okay, Megan Shumway, you've been muted. Daniel Gear, we have unmuted your line. Please remember to state your name and affiliation. Daniel Gear, you have been unmuted. Please.
There we go. Hi, this is Daniel Gear. My affiliation is with CAS Inc. We're a recycler of ferrous and non-ferrous metal and a clean producer of aluminum. So our company has begun to take advantage of some of these incentives to start converting our fleet vehicles to electric, including forklifts, starting to look at yard goats and other heavy equipment trucks. Part of my concern as we do this is when looking at the life cycle analysis of these vehicles, an issue that we've been running into at our facility has been the earlier generations of EV cars coming to the end of their life cycle, and we've seen an influx of EV batteries coming in unwanted or dumped around the facility, and the disposal of those batteries has become quite a challenge and almost unmanageable. I'm only familiar with one facility in Southern California that even does recycling of these batteries, and even that comes with a substantial cost. So I'm wondering if CARB is working with DTSC or other organizations on the downstream part of this program as it begins to ramp up, insofar as, you know, what to do with these batteries as we're starting to put these vehicles into use. Right now, I haven't been able to find a good solution to it. So I'm wondering if that's something that's being looked at along with other metrics.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. So this has been a discussion point for a while. I know that there are state initiatives to increase excuse me, battery recycling capacity in the state. Obviously, like the lithium metal that's in these batteries is important to keep anyways. There's also initiatives to create second lives for the batteries. So even when they are no longer suitable for, you know, on-road applications or use in vehicles of some sort, that they will still have a second life in doing like on-site battery storage or something like that. And so I know that there are programs about that. But unfortunately, I'm not the expert in that. I'll give my colleagues a chance. Maybe someone on here has more information.
Yeah, and I will also drop a link that one of our colleagues shared. I'll be dropping that in the chat.
Terrific.
Thanks, Diane.
All right, so we have time for one more question before we move on. And then just a quick reminder, again, we definitely want to make sure that we're uplifting community member voices. And, you know, just want to put that out there. And when we do ask questions, I also ask that we try to keep things plain language just for folks who might not be as familiar with maybe the more technical aspects that folks are asking about. And I'll turn it back to you, Dorji.
Christopher Chavez, your line has been unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
Great. This is Chris Chavez. I'm the Deputy Policy Director at Coalition for Clean Air, as well as part of the Charge Ahead California campaign. First, thank you for making this space open. I also want to commend CARB for implementing some very aggressive, very strong efforts to clean the transportation sector, which is the biggest source of emissions in California, both in terms of climate as well as health harming emissions and carcinogenic emissions as well. I think one of the points that I wanted to bring up is hearing more about CARB's plan for focusing in these investments, both in disadvantaged communities as well as the small fleets. As we've seen in the past, small fleets tend to not be able to apply for funding as quickly as some of the larger fleets, and especially given the limited state resources. We know this is a difficult budget year, but just wanting to see again, like how CARB is really looking at prioritizing the funding where it's needed the most into those small fleet operators.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. So for many years now, part of how HVIP has incentivized more of the vouchers going into disadvantaged communities is by offering a voucher enhancement for vehicles that are domiciled in a disadvantaged community. So essentially a higher voucher amount if you purchase a vehicle and it is domiciled in a disadvantaged community. It's always about striking a balance. We want HVIP to be easy. It's supposed to be a statewide program. And of course, we want to continue to drive that technology transfer and evolution. But as I also mentioned, we are narrowing our focus into small fleets. In the funding plan that was adopted last year, we set a policy that come January 1st, 2024, HVIP would become only accessible to fleets of 50 or fewer. So really making sure that HVIP is helping those fleets, the small fleets, the undercapitalized fleets that need the most assistance. And in the meantime, we also have other measures in place to ensure funding availability for small fleets, like a bulk purchase requirement for the largest fleets, as well as voucher reductions for the largest fleets. I also want to mention that we will be announcing a work group for HVIP and CORE, and that will be coming out in the next few weeks. The work group will be in August, and we're going to talk more about how we are continuing to evolve HVIP and the sub-program ISEF to even better serve small fleets. ISEF is a subprogram within HVIP. Innovative Small E-Fleets is what it stands for. And this is a subprogram within HVIP that is specifically and entirely formed to help small fleets, not just with higher incentives for a standard truck purchase, but also to supply innovative solutions to getting small fleets into zero emission trucks, such as innovative truck as a service solutions or short-term leases. So we're going to talk a lot more about that in August and what we have planned, their proposal for this year to make both of those programs even better catered to the small fleets.
Understood, and I appreciate that response. And I know that this is also a community focused meeting. I will note that I live just east of the 710 freeway in Long Beach, so definitely in the community and experiencing all the air quality impacts that are from the goods movement sector, while also understanding it's a vital sector as well. What on that point, I would just say also, as you're going forward, always keeping public health as a priority, whether that is through the assessment of Callan virus screen or in the South Coast Air Basin, the multiple air toxic exposure study, which looks at relative cancer risk. I think keeping that as part of your strategy, looking at ways of really focusing in on those communities for these programs is going to be important, especially given the role that goods movement has in our air quality challenges here. So thank you, and I'll go ahead and yield the floor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. All right, so for just to stay on time, we are going to move on to our next topic. However, I do want to say that the next topic is more of an open forum, so we'll go ahead and just continue calling on the hands that are already raised. So please leave your hands raised, and then we'll go to the next slide, which is actually a quick break. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. It is 5:49 right now, so let's come back let's do 5:55 just to keep it nice and even. And at 5:55, we'll continue with the next topic. So thank you, everyone. Keep your hands raised. We'll continue with answering questions shortly. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our next topic, which is heavy-duty vehicle and off-road equipment investments. So this topic will be an open forum for our heavy-duty staff to discuss with community members about their needs and more. And so the folks who had their hand raised in the previous section, you'll be able to continue on with your questions here. So I'll go ahead and invite April to the floor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is April. I'm the lead staff over the heavy duty projects and the funding plan. I wanted to start off by posing some questions to help our staff better understand the community's needs. Diane will also drop these questions in the chat for you all to see. We would love to hear from you, whether it is to answer the questions or discuss any other heavy duty topics. So first, where do you think CARB should prioritize its heavy duty investments for this year? What are the biggest local needs in terms of heavy duty investments? Things like transit buses, refuse trucks, or replacing older drayage trucks. And lastly, are there small businesses or small fleets in your community that you know could benefit from investments in cleaner heavy duty technologies?
All right. So we can go ahead and open it up for discussion, and we'll have Dorji go ahead and start calling on hands. So I know some of the hands from before might have been for the previous topic. That's okay. And folks are welcome to answer these questions in the chat or ask other questions related to all things heavy duty and off-road equipment.
Beverly DeChow, we have unmuted your line. Please remember to state your name and your affiliation.
That was close. Beverly Deschaux is my name, and my affiliation is the Electric Vehicle Association of California Central Coast. First, before I forget, addressing the person who asked the question about what to do with his batteries of his trucks. Redwood Materials in Sparks, Nevada is looking for them, and please do not throw them away. They have all the minerals are infinitely reusable, and they are trying to develop the processes for separating the materials so that they can be reused, and so they would like to have them. Redwood Materials. J.B. Strobel is the founder of that organization. He was the co-founder of Tesla, but wanted to move on to other parts of the transition. So my question is, I know in a previous discussion about heavy duty vehicles, my question is, has anything changed in CARB's mind about whether to bring back, call back, whatever you want to call it, make sure that the vehicles that are being replaced are actually being taken off the road? Because if they're not being taken off our road, then that's a problem for us. If it's not being taken off the road in general, that's a problem for us as a planet. I know that old school buses have been shipped to the third world after they're replaced with electric. So I want to personally and professionally implore you to please consider that they should be removed from the market. I know what the discussion was several months ago was that they were just going to be, the electric vehicle would just be added on to the fleet. And that is not really serving what the intention of CARB, what I believe the intention of CARB is, which is to reduce our ongoing emissions. And I had one other question, I lost it, sorry. Oh, yes, I wanted to know, I know in those previous discussions, many people commented that the size considered for a small fleet should be 10 rather than 50. So I'm curious what CARB considers, how many fleets that you're aware of are over 50 vehicles, how many would be in those fleets? And yeah, how many in all for those? I'm trying to formulate this. How many vehicles does that represent in the over 50 fleets? Thank you.
Hi, Beverly. Matt Williams, HFIP lead and heavy duty investment strategy lead. So I'll answer your first question first, which is I would like to call back. We had a slide during my presentation where we showed all of the different funding programs and what they do. So it's really important that CARB have a whole portfolio of incentive programs that do different things. And so for low carbon transportation in particular, the real goals, thank you, this is the slide, the real goals for low carbon transportation are doing this technology advancement, getting the technologies that we need for the future ready for broad market adoption. We do have these other funding programs that do require scrap. Their whole point is to get near-term emissions reductions. It's important that we have both. They serve different purposes, and we need all of those things to happen simultaneously. So while low carbon transportation investments don't require scrappage, which is important to get that early adoption of technology, other funding programs like Carl Moyer do. For the second one about small fleets, I just want to clarify that while HVIP eligibility as a whole will become limited to fleets of 50 or smaller. Our actual definition of small fleets for the purposes of elevated incentives in HVIP right now is fleets of 10 or fewer. And for our innovative small e-fleets pilot, it's fleets of less than 20. I don't have numbers for you as to like the number of fleets or the number of vehicles incentivized for fleets of different sizes, but that is something we could get together.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Oh, am I still unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah.
The chat is disabled, so we are not able to put anything in there.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Go ahead, Diane.
yeah, so currently the chat, it's set up so that we can drop links or drop questions for the participants, but unfortunately for security reasons, that's the way it's set up, where it's not a back and forth, but we're hoping that people can raise their hand if they want to answer these questions. So again, those questions are, where do you think CARB should, or where do you think CARB should prioritize its heavy duty investments for this year? What are the biggest local needs in terms of heavy duty investments? Things like transit buses, refuse trucks, replacing older drayage or delivery trucks, etc. And are there small businesses or small fleets in your community that you know could benefit from investments in cleaner heavy duty technology? So with that, I'll pass it back to Dorji so he can call on raised hands.
And briefly, Dorji, before you start, I just want to say that was a really good question, and I want to use the opportunity to ask everyone in the audience, as HVIP is going through the funding plan process this year, we have opportunities to make changes to definitions. So we'd love to hear from the attendees here. What should we be using as a definition for small fleet? Variously, we use, the number of vehicles, medium and heavy duty vehicles in a business's fleet, as well as annual revenue limits. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. Thank you, Dorji.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Beverly. Next, Maya Inigo Anderson, your line is being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation. Maya,
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm so sorry. This is again Maya Inigo Anderson with Communities for a Better Environment. I also live in Southern California near a major freeway corridor, specifically the 210. And like many local residents, we clean black soot off our windowsills every 3 weeks or so. I was hoping that maybe you could give a quick snapshot of where California is at as far as achieving the goals and timelines outlined in the Advanced Clean Trucks Rule. And I have a specific interest in learning about where we're at as far as replacing polluting drayage trucks. The LA Times recently reported that only 75 registered port drayage trucks are zero emission trucks currently, which is a step in the right direction, right? But at least to a layperson like me, it sounds like we still have a lot of work to do. So if you could maybe just report on the progress of, in general, how are we doing as far as our progress with medium and heavy duty vehicles, and specifically in the ports, in the port area and with drayage trucks, as well as with drayage trucks charging infrastructure.
Hi, Maya. Thank you for that. So for the first one, we do have a whole portion of the CARB agency that is in charge of doing inventory, but where you can go to see specifically for HVIP funded vehicles is the HVIP website. That's californiahvip.org. And on the impacts tab, you can see a map of where HVIP funded vehicles have been deployed and the number. Right now, there's over 2,000 zero emission heavy duty vehicles on the road, which is impressive progress, and we expect that to increase non-linearly in the future. Related to that, for drayage trucks in particular, we had an initiative recently, a year ago, that encourage the early adoption of zero emission drayage trucks. And of course, in anticipation of the advanced clean fleets rule, we anticipate a lot more interest in zero emission drayage trucks. I'll just point out that from the time a vehicle is ordered and incentivized, it does take a while for those vehicles to be built and delivered. So while hundreds of zero emission drayage trucks have been put on order and are in construction now, it will take a little more time for all of those to hit the road, but we expect a large number of them to do so in the next year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Maya. Mani Berenji, your line is being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
Oh, hi there, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Excellent, great. So my name is Manny Berenji. I am a physician by trade. I practice here in Long Beach, and I also live here in Long Beach. I have prepared comments, but I also did have a question for the end. I don't want to hog up too much time, so I'll just jump right to my comments. So I'm a member of Climate Health Now. It's an organization consisting of volunteer healthcare professionals, and we're advocating for clean air measures to better protect Californians' health. I'm also a member of Physicians for Social Responsibility Los Angeles. I'm also an avid supporter of local community environmental groups, including East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice, which is a community-based organization here in Southeast Los Angeles. So I'm going to provide some perspectives. I treat patients, I treat veterans, and many of them have been affected by the ongoing pollution in our local environment. I also live in Long Beach, and I'm also harmed by the heavy diesel as well as the gas-related air pollutants coming from the Port of Los Angeles as well as of the Port of Long Beach. I live very nearby the 710 transportation corridor. As we all know, there's a great deal of diesel particulates that are generated from that corridor on a daily basis. I have itchy eyes, I have a scratchy throat most days, and it actually does get better when I leave the Long Beach area. I actually visit friends and family up north in the Santa Monica Mountains on weekends, and I've noticed a major difference when I do leave this area. In terms of additional information from the health perspective, the 2023 State of the Air Report was recently issued by the American Lung Association. And Los Angeles and the Long Beach area was in the top 10 most polluted cities by daily particulate matter. It was in the top 5 most polluted cities by annual particulate matter, and the #1 most polluted by ozone. And as we all know, the main culprit is diesel exhaust. And the people most affected, Black and brown people. So we know there's up to 40,000 diesel trucks currently traveling on the I-710 corridor daily. And the exhaust that's generated is a real complex mixture of gases, vapors, aerosols, and particulate matter. Almost all the particulates emitted from these diesel engines are respirable, with a particulate matter size less than 10 microns. And the majority of the particulates have diameters less than 1 micron. I'm really concerned about the drayage trucks, and I really appreciate the information provided tonight in terms of what's going to happen to reduce the number of these current trucks that are primarily diesel emitting. But we really need to be on track to make sure that we can get as many of these diesel generated drayage trucks off the roads, so we can really impact our community and really impact our veteran patients. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. I appreciate the opportunity to provide a comment tonight.
Thank you. I also wanted to point out, while this work group is focused on our incentive programs, incentives are just one part of the puzzle. The other main part is our regulations. So our incentives and our regulations work together to create this broad transformation. The advanced clean trucks and advanced clean fleets rules, which are now in effect with first compliance dates coming up next year, are going to drive a large amount of that change. I'll put a link in the chat to information about the advanced clean fleets rule, where you can learn more about how that is going to transform in short time the heavy duty fleet, and especially the drayage one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Manny. Brett Andrews, you are being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
Brett, are you still with us? All right, let's go back to Brett. Let's go. Oh, there he is.
Yep.
All right, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Hi, my name is Brett Andrews. I'm a neurologist from Oakland, and I'm a member of Climate Health Now and Bay Area Physicians for Social Responsibility. I realize there will be other people who want to speak, so I will make my comments brief. Thank you for your efforts, CARB, and to improve air quality and focus on disadvantaged communities and move us forward on our climate goals. As a neurologist, I'm very concerned about the association of air pollution emissions, and not only with lung disease and the other diseases, including heart attack and other organ effects, but on the brain. And there's strong evidence now that stroke and dementia are highly correlated with the particulates that have been outlined by the other physicians, PM 2.5 especially, but also nitrogen oxides and volatile organic components. And for generations, communities of low income, people of color have been exposed to higher levels of air pollution. In the Bay Area, we're experiencing that, especially for disadvantaged groups in West Oakland around our port here, and in the refinery corridor, Richmond, California, Martinez, and other communities in that area due to the oil refineries. And these multiply background exposures, worsening air quality and compounding health harm. So especially since the funding has been cut, and I know we've been outlining the programs today to prioritize, by all means, lower emissions for these communities. This should include ensuring that the smaller truck fleets have as much access to the incentives in as many creative ways as possible. And I know you're exploring those solutions, but perhaps looking at collaborating with other programs and perhaps funding loans and so forth might be necessary to support the smaller fleets with low resources, and strong advice and support in all the way through the process of funding and implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett. You summarized some of our key priorities right now. When we showed that heavy duty investment priorities table, one of the things that you'll notice is on there is financing and insurance assistance. This is just one small part of our mission to make incentives more accessible to small and undercapitalized fleets. I mentioned just a little bit ago about the interface between our incentives and regulations. The Advanced Clean Fleets rule is really going to drive these larger fleets, these well-capitalized fleets that have better access to capital, and they benefit from lower operating costs. It's going to drive them to adopt zero-emission vehicles and leave our incentives, along with the other changes that we're making, for these smaller fleets that need them most. So we're really making that a top priority, and I thank you for that.
All right, so we don't have hands at this time, but I just wanted to go back to some of the questions that April initially posed. Again, those are, where do you think CARB should prioritize its heavy duty investments for this year? What are the biggest local needs in terms of heavy duty investments? And are there small businesses or small fleets in your community that you know could benefit from investments in cleaner heavy duty technology? All right, we have some hands. So Dorji, back to you.
Megan Shumway, your mic is being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
I'm Megan Shumway. I'm a member of Climate Health Now and a retired obstetric and public health nurse. I live in Sacramento, and we have our fair share of warehouses. Most of them are in the low-income communities, and the biggest problem we have is that two major interstates as well as several highways converge in Sacramento. And we have Highway 99, Highway 50, Interstate 80, Highway or Interstate 5, and several other smaller highways that all converge in Sacramento. And a lot of trucks come through here and leave their pollution behind as they go by. And a lot of the people that live near the freeways are low-income residents and are exposed to a lot of this pollution that they leave behind. So, you know, Sacramento, even though it may not be like Long Beach where they have a big port with idling trucks, they've have a lot of the same problems from air pollution, especially diesel pollution and particulate matter. There's a lot of asthma and a lot of other diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and a lot of things that have been associated with particulate air pollution. So I guess I really want to advocate for, you know, the trucks that do have a domicile here, for them to be, you know, given a priority because of the, you know, a lot of trucks that do not live in California are passing through to other places, and some of the places they're coming to are warehouses here, and that is a, you know, a big health problem for our community. And so I just wanted to make people aware of that sometimes when it's a convergence of highways, those low-income communities are the ones that suffer the most. And I don't know if there's anything that you all can do to make that issue more top of mind. Thanks.
Hi, Megan. That issue is always top of mind, and CARB is doing everything it can in consultation with our sister agencies and, of course, in collaboration with other state government to make that happen. One thing I wanted to mention, I talked about the beachheads or the pathway for technology evolution. It really shows how technology moves from the easier early applications to more difficult ones. You talked about vehicles that are domiciled in a single place and, you know, return to base at night. Those are some of the early targets of our incentives and future regulation. And as technology advances and improves, we'll be able to build out longer range infrastructure and work on the long haul trucking. That is also something that you see in that 3-year investment priorities table. And then, of course, the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation will impact all of these vehicles, even the ones that don't live in California but operate here. So thank you for bringing that up. Always top of mind for us.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Matt. William Pevich, your mic is being unmuted. Oh, is your hand still up or? Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, okay, there it is. Your mic is being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
I was lowering my hand in anticipation of you calling on me. Thank you. My name is Bill Pevick. I am a retired vascular surgeon and also a member of Climate Health Now. You've heard from a couple of my colleagues. I don't have a question. I'd like to, though, address one of the questions you posed to the audience, which is what are the biggest local needs in terms of heavy duty investments? And I would like to suggest that for CARB to be good stewards of our tax dollars, they should want to focus a significant part of their investments in what's currently feasible. And again, that would be the drayage and the smaller vehicles used to support warehouses and ports like the forklifts and so on. Their duty cycles make them easier to electrify than long haul trucks. And the fact, as you noticed, as you mentioned, that they stay in one place when they're not working would make building of the charging infrastructure easier. So it certainly would be more feasible to emphasize the ports and the warehouses for electrification at this point. The other thing that CARB should want to do is invest in what is going to be most impactful. And from a health standpoint, the harmful diesel emissions are concentrated near warehouses and docks. It's been shown that living within a third mile of ports or warehouses is associated with increased asthma, lung diseases, and earlier deaths. So decreasing emissions in those areas will most likely have the greatest direct health benefits. And CARB's also interested in environmental justice, and freight hubs tend to be located in neighborhoods with lower than average income and higher percentage of people of color. So addressing these locations would address the concerns for environmental injustice, which these neighborhoods have suffered for a long period of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. So we definitely appreciate everyone's comments, appreciate everyone sharing their experiences and their feedback and letting us know where we should invest and what we should prioritize. So it is getting about time, or we're a little bit past time on this topic, but the good thing is that the next topic is also an open forum. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next topic. There's a different set of questions there that's a little bit more general to the entire funding plan, but the folks who have their hand raised, keep them raised and we'll continue to take them. But we'll also pose a couple of additional questions to you. So let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. Next. All right, one more. Okay, perfect. So on this slide, we have a few questions for you all just to kind of get the conversation started, even though we're just keeping it going. But these questions, again, are just to kind of help staff capture the needs of the communities across California. And I want to say to everyone, this is just one way of us to engage with you and to get your insights on how we can continue to develop the funding plan. But there are several other ways that we can engage with you. So one of those is through a survey that we've developed, which I will link. And through that survey, you can also let us know your thoughts, your priorities, what you would like to see us invest. And towards the end of that survey, there's also a question where you can answer if you'd like to connect with staff and chat one-on-one. So that could either be you, or maybe you and your community-based group, or a group of folks in your neighborhood, whatever it might be. We just want to provide as many opportunities to you as possible to engage with us, whether it's through that survey, chatting with us one-on-one, emailing us, or just continuing to discuss together during these evening meetings. So with that, let's open up the discussion. So folks with their hands up, continue to have them up. You can continue to answer questions about the previous topic, since this is open topic about all things funding plan. But additionally, we have these other questions like, how can staff ensure that projects we fund are the projects that the residents want or need the most? What investments, policies, or priorities would you like to see in your community? What are the biggest barriers when applying for clean transportation funding? And what metrics of success should CARB track? So with that, I'll pass it back to Dorji and go ahead and start to call on folks.
Ashley McClure, your line is being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
And quick reminder that folks, when we give you permission to speak on Zoom, you still have to unmute yourselves, just FYI.
Wonderful, thank you. So my name is Ashley McClure. I'm a primary care physician. I take care of patients in Oakland and the East Bay area. I'm a co-founder, co-director of Climate Health Now, that's organizing the health community in California to advocate for climate solutions in the interest of health and equity. Appreciate this venue and format to be a part of the conversation. And Climate Health Now is also part of the Invest in Clean Air Coalition. So my comments are really about kind of the urgency of all of this, and the points about the budget cuts are really unfortunate. And I just wanted to highlight a study that was done actually in West Oakland, where the port is, with Kaiser Permanente patients and EDF, and they showed, like literally block by block, how if you live on a block with higher traffic and oil and diesel related, gas and diesel related pollution, that for elderly folks 65 and older, there's a measurable difference in the risk of heart attacks and strokes. So the urgency of this for the patients that we take care of in clinical settings in the hospital, like every dollar going through the funding plan is literally, as I see it, completely a health investment. So my question, and this kind of goes to the metrics of success that CARB is tracking, is really the health benefits. And with the budgetary cuts, I'm curious if there's an overlay of the funding plan dollars spent and the health benefits of that, and if CARB is tracking those anticipated health benefits based on the emissions reduced. So I think that really helps to boost support and help people understand that the importance of this beyond kind of the lingo is like lives saved and heart attacks prevented. And that's really what we're here to talk about, and especially the health equity impacts of that. And those who've had the most pollution, having them receive the greatest investments of the funding plan first. So thank you all for having us, and eager to hear thoughts.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Do we have staff who can speak to the metrics and how those might tie to health benefits? Oh, Matt, you're muted.
Thank you. Avoiding because it's not my area of expertise, so I welcome any of my colleagues to chime in and add to this. But all investments through low carbon transportation are under the umbrella of California Climate Investments, or CCI, which is a larger program. And that program does track a broad array of metrics. You can also find within our funding plan as Appendix A, I believe, our quantification methodology that shows for each of our programs, which each of them are different, how each dollar invested does turn into tangible benefits like emissions reductions, and for CCI reporting, jobs and other things.
Thank you, Matt. I will find a link for that and drop it in the chat as well.
Nish Krishnamurti, your line is being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
Yeah, hi everyone. Name is Nish Krishnamurti. I'm an air quality specialist at South Coast AQMD, where I help implement the community emission reduction plan for the East Los Angeles, Boyle Heights, West Commerce, AB 617 community. Hi, Diane. Anyway, I just wanted to ask about the role that the ACT or the Advanced Clean Fleets rule might have on waste disposal trucks. That is a concern that some of our community members express, especially in East Los Angeles, where there is a concentration of waste transfer facilities. So I'm kind of curious about that. And I know that incentives are available, but I was wondering if they're going to be kind of, if they're part of or if they're addressed in the Advanced Clean Fleets. Thanks.
Sure. So I will, oh, great. We have someone on to talk about Advanced Clean Fleet. So I'll welcome Bruce up.
Hey, Matt, thank you. So on waste trucks, they are absolutely addressed under the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule. In fact, I don't have the schedule up. Let me see if I could grab it. But really, we're talking about two different things. There are specific requirements for the transfer trucks themselves and for the waste trucks, or those trucks that pick up trash. So yes, they're both covered under that regulation. And again, I apologize, I don't have the timelines up, but you can find those in our Advanced Clean Fleets webpage.
And on the incentive side, we also have an initiative called Refuse Reimagined. We started it last year and we're continuing it into this year. And it is to provide enhanced incentives to early adopters of zero emission refuse trucks. So that's a 25% increase over the base voucher for an HVIP for refuse trucks, for zero emission refuse.
Great, thanks for that.
Good to hear from you, Nish. I used to work with Nish, FYI. Great guy. All right, Dorji, it's all you.
Wendy Ring, you're being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
Hi, my name's Wendy Ring. I'm another physician with Climate Health Now. And I just had a couple of thoughts. One is that I think as a result of the advanced clean trucks or advanced clean fleets, we have some kind of a census now of vehicles. And I strongly endorse the focusing of incentives in communities that have the dirtiest air. But is there also a way that you might be able to focus incentives on companies with the dirtiest trucks? That's not me growling, that's my puppy. Sorry, I'm really
no, I love that. I just wish we could see. We love the dogs here. But to attempt to answer your question, I don't know if there is a way for us to do that with incentives, especially programs like HVIP. They're supposed to be broadly available and simple, but I will say that we have other incentive programs in the portfolio that are specifically targeted at getting off the road the dirtiest trucks. Carl Moyer is a great example, as well as the Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust, which requires the scrappage of a vehicle 2012 or older. So we do have programs that do that.
Thanks, Matt.
Megan Shumway, your line is being unmuted.
Oh, I must have hit that by mistake. I'm sorry. I'll lower my hand.
Oh, that's okay. Christopher Chavez, your line is being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and your affiliation.
Yes, this is Chris Chavez, Coalition for Clean Air again. Regarding, I think one of the prior commenters mentioned the community emission reduction programs and AB 617. And I know Diane's very familiar with the AB 617 program in your prior positions. But the one thing I did, noted in the past is that there had been funding given to the AB 617 communities to sort of figure out how they want to spend that money at the community steering committee level. So they had like a participatory budget exercise, at least within the South Coast communities. I know that might be a little bit out of the scope of the programs in the funding plan, but maybe if you could talk a little bit about how AB 617 communities, if they'll be getting additional funding for clean trucks, that would be helpful. Also, along similar lines, I know that there was also money restored for ports funding as well. But I don't think that it's going to be in this year's budget, but rather delayed into future budgets. So if you can confirm that, that'd be appreciated.
Hi, Chris. I can tackle the last question you had on port funding getting established in the later years of the ZEV package. I can confirm that. However, like you said, it's subject to future appropriation, but that is included in the later years of the zero emission vehicle package.
Okay. And then for the 617 program, I may not have caught that.
So for the AB 617 program, and specifically the incentives that you're talking about, which was that budgeting exercise, that would be separate from the funding plan. It gets funded through AB 617. Forgive me, I don't remember the exact name, but separately, I think, so you're asking, can the funding plan kind of do something similar? Or is that what you're asking, like where the community participates in how that budget gets allocated?
I perhaps doesn't speak at that level of specificity, but I certainly wouldn't have any objection to that approach. And I think it was actually a very helpful exercise to go through.
Yeah, so from what I remember, specifically in South Coast, because I don't know if other air districts do that. So those particular AB 617 communities in the South Coast, they all got a chunk of funding from those separate funding sources, which is specific to AB 617. And then staff there decided, hey, so let's take these funds and let the communities decide how they want to divvy it up. Like, for example, say it was $10 million. Of those $10 million, would the community like to put it towards, ZE trucks or, other incentives? Even I think green space was an option, or air filtration systems, et cetera. So I think, and maybe Grace can speak to this, with the funding plan, it's a little bit different because the budget gets allocated by the legislature. However, there is in some of those pots flexibility in how things get allocated. And that's where we would like to hear from the community members on, okay, say we have a certain pot, how do we distribute that specifically to different programs? So maybe Grace, you can speak a little bit more to how once we have an allocation of a pot of funding, like let's say for the light duty vehicle and clean mobility equity, how we kind of decide how to distribute that allocation and how the community can participate in that.
Yeah, so as you know, that's typically a part of the funding plan process, but typically what we look at is what the projections look like for the programs and for the upcoming years, kind of how we determine what the allocation should be. But as you know, in some budget years, sometimes we do receive a lump sum of funding that it's a pretty broad category, but other years, sometimes the legislature is specific on what program they want those dollars to go to. So did that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah, I think I guess what the main question I was kind of asking was what sort of additional resources might be going to those AB 617 communities, if there was anything provided in the budget or anything CARB had planned out. As far as how that money is allocated, I do think that participatory budgeting model that South Coast implemented was good, and even like the most ardent critics of their AB 617 implementation felt that was a good exercise. But I guess I was a little bit less, I wasn't really intending to focus in on that, but just more again, like what the general question is what sort of additional resources might be going to those communities? Again, recognizing it may be outside of the scope of today's discussion.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't have the numbers in front of me specifically for what was appropriated to the 617 programs, but we can certainly follow up with those numbers.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Grace. All right, so can Tabitha or Nick share screen? I don't think we need it super soon, but we just lost some power. So sorry, everyone, a little bit of technical issues, but let's continue on.
Manny Berenji, your line is being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and your affiliation.
Oh, yes. Hi, Manny Berenji, Climate Health Now, Physicians for Social Responsibility physician here in Long Beach, California. Actually, I've been looking at your survey, and I'm actually all about community engagement, and I really appreciate your questions because they were very thought-provoking for me. I've done a lot of community work for years, primarily focused on patient-related matters. Clearly, this is a very new space for me, but clearly bringing some of those skill sets into this arena, I think there's a lot of potential here. So I'm kind of just looking at some of these questions, and I was kind of curious to see how the distribution of funding based on needs would work. I mean, I live in Long Beach. I drive by Wilmington a lot. You know, I've done some community related activities there over the last few years. And being able to reach these communities in a way that's accessible and they're able to connect with the person, I feel like, I mean, please forgive me if I'm wrong, but this audience tonight, clearly we're not getting those folks who have fleets less than 20 who could potentially benefit from some of the CARB funding that's being allocated. So I feel like there is still a bit of a disconnect. I mean, I appreciate these workshops and all, but really trying to kind of focus on ways where we can get the message out directly to the community. I mean, I think having an ambassador program, potentially even do the group to get this message across, especially to those small fleet owners. I'm guessing many of them may be people from, you know, disadvantaged communities. They may not know all the nuances here. So I was kind of curious to learn more about potential strategies and maybe kind of putting our heads together tonight since we have the time and we have, seems like not a lot of people to really kind of figure this out because the money is there, but how do we get the money to the people who need it most?
Yeah, Manny, I really appreciate that. And that's something, you know, specifically that community engagement and how to get to the people who need it the most. That's something that we're always trying to talk to, you know, folks like yourself about and really try to think of different strategies. I know that our teams have begun to think of some different ways to really get into the community, not just, you know, with these virtual workshops, because we know that not everyone has access to this virtual space. But for example, one thing that we're trying to do is trying to get more boots on the ground through geographic representatives. So for example, on one of our teams, we're starting to tap folks to kind of be in charge of a region and really get to know all the community-based organizations, get to know the community really well, what the needs are, and really go into the community and participate in person and try to reach out to the right people. So that's one thing we're doing kind of generally to conduct outreach on clean transportation at a high level. But I'm sure that there are more specific strategies that staff can speak to that we're doing to reach, for example, like fleets in particular, which I think Matt talked about a little bit earlier. But yeah, if staff wants to kind of give a quick little overview on what we've done in terms of outreach, and then I'd love to hear from folks on any additional strategies that you all can think of, because, you know, that's why we're here, to hear from you and what your ideas are as well.
Specifically for the HVIP program, we rely on our grantee to do a lot of outreach. We hold lots of events, showcases, ride and drives, things like that in the community to get people familiar with the technology that's available, as well as the incentive programs. We have email lists. We also have, and this is again, just like this discussion here, a resource we might be able to leverage better, which is our ombudsman. Our ombudsman is connected to, like, there's this small business opportunities and advisory panel that then connects out to a whole bunch of other organizations like the Black Chamber of Commerce and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce that would allow us to potentially get that message out a little more. So that's definitely a road we'd like to explore more. Perhaps other people on the call can talk about the other ways that we've been conducting outreach or other ideas for how we can get the word out more. Oh, maybe Bruce, you could talk about the zero emission truck stop.
Sorry, looking for my unmute button. Absolutely. We do have a number of methods that we use to outreach, and really, for a very long time, our target audience has been smaller fleets because they needed the most help. Matt mentioned our zero emission truck stop. That's a sister site to our regular truck stop page. Any of you that haven't seen it and would like to take a look, what I always recommend to folks is that they just do a search for CARB truck stop. As I said, we have used that site for a long time to reach out and educate all size fleets, but again, we aim that really at small fleets. Additionally to things such as our truck stop websites, we do various types of outreach events. Obviously, over the last couple of years, we weren't out in the field as much as we used to be, and we're getting out there more and more. We have an in-person outreach event coming up in southern San Diego near the border in a few weeks, and we'll be having a lot more of those over the coming months and years, in fact. And while those are open to everyone, again, one of our big target audiences is always small fleets, and providing information about incentives at those is also a real priority for us. Not only have we always done it as CARB staff, but those other entities that work with our funding programs are often there to provide assistance in getting into the funding programs.
And
Oh,
then
that's helpful. I appreciate that. I think it'll be good to kind of see where things trend in the next couple of years. Hopefully having some accountability, being able to track, how many fleet owners with less than 20, vehicles actually did get funding. I would be very curious to see how that ends up going through. I do think that there needs to be more boots on the ground, really face-to-face community engagement. But yeah, I appreciate the insights here.
No, and we would agree with that. And something that Matt asked a few minutes ago is, we're always looking for suggestions, for input. I've been fortunate to get out into the field a great deal, including into some environmental justice communities with some of the CBOs in those communities. And we try and leverage their efforts to get the word out to small fleets. A lot of people don't kind of think of it this way. I mean, yes, there are community members that want to know about our programs as well, but in many cases, those small fleet owners are also residents of those communities. So, we're always looking for additional ideas and input on ways to try and reach out. It can be very difficult to the small fleet owner operator, and honestly and frankly, when we do even talk to the CBOs, that's something that comes back is, yes, it is difficult. So the more we hear from people, the more ideas we get, the better.
Thank you.
Ashley Garrity, your line is being unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
Yes, hi, Ashley Garrity from the Green Lending Institute. Thank you for sharing about a lot of the community engagement efforts that CARB has been engaging in and embarking on, especially the parts about moving into or going into directly and into communities and hearing more about their experiences. And then, of course, this meeting as well. I think something that comes to mind for me is the amount of jargon that is related to these topics is just huge, and it's really hard to understand, as I've been in this almost a year and still really have to be very actively engaged to be following some conversations. And I do realize that's the nature of, you know, a funding plan process and development. And I think getting communities and their priorities is going to continue to be dependent on taking out the jargon and really asking specific questions that might not be necessarily attached to how should we fund these programs, which programs should we fund, but asking more directed questions at what are your priorities in your community. And we heard a lot today about clean air and especially like highway residents located near highways. So like things like that, and then CARB translating that into programs and priorities. The communities also have the ability to be able to do that analysis and provide recommendations on their own. So I think having that two-pronged approach is important. And then, yeah, I think just on the question of metrics of success, Greenlighting is a racial equity organization, and one of the main pillars of making sure that processes are equitable is ensuring that metrics reflect the equity goals. So I think having really clear goals from the outset of these are the equity goals that we want to accomplish. These are the communities that we want to hit, how many communities, so measurable goals as well. And then metrics and analysis processes that align with those goals to really see, are the efforts that we're doing having that equity impact that we're interested in. So like something that we've been advocating for a number of years is for information on disadvantaged communities and low-income communities and how many of these are getting incentives in the light duty space. So it was exciting to hear that there's more of an emphasis from Matt, your presentation, on seeing which, I'm sorry if I get the exact details of this incorrect, which of the HFIP incentives have gone to disadvantaged communities and small fleets. So like things like that are really, really important to be able to see the impacts of the decisions that are being made year over year. Yeah, thank you for listening. I'm not really sure if there's a response to that or not.
Thanks, Ashley. No, we definitely appreciate all that input. Thank you very much for the reminder about, not using jargon and trying to keep things plain language. I think you're absolutely right. That's something super important. And as far as metrics, I think those were some really great ideas to keep in mind for our metrics. And yeah, just definitely appreciate your comments. All right.
Maya Inigo Anderson, your line is unmuted. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
Again, I'm Maya with Communities for a Better Environment. And as far as the first discussion question, how can staff ensure that projects we fund are the projects that the residents most want and need? I think just asking open-ended questions like you're doing now in community meetings such as this is a great start. So I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate the discussion about reaching out to small fleet operators. And it sounds like there's already meaningful partnerships with CBOs and impacted communities, which is great. And then the other suggestion, which, of course, is resource intensive, but the other suggestion would be to, directly reach out to drivers with flyers, at the ports or at warehouses where drivers wait in line, and you can, maybe reach the owners through the drivers. When I worked on a different project related to drivers who were employees, we did a lot of face-to-face outreach and were able to have meaningful conversations as folks were waiting in their trucks.
Just if I may, just one thing on that, and we completely agree with that. There are actually a number of outreach events coming up at ports over the next number of months. We've been invited to most of those. We will be going to most of those. We're also working with ports to maybe hold some of our own. And as far as flyers. We have done that, but just so that you know, also something that we do as we can is send out notices to pretty much everyone who has a medium and heavy duty vehicle in the state of California. One example of that is we're just about to send a postcard out to all the fleets registered with the DMV. It's a bit of a catch-all postcard, so it's really saying there are a number of regulations. It's leading them to a place where they can find information out on not only those regulations, but on things such as incentive programs. We will have a one-stop place where they can go to. We do now, but we will point them to that on that postcard. And I believe that we're just about 300,000 postcards that we're ready to send out. We try as many methods as we can. And as I said, hearing things like, handing out more flyers, it is resource intensive, but maybe that is the kind of thing that we need to do. And there are other entities that we can work with to do that as well.
Thank you for that. And I would hope that the postcards are also bilingual.
I'm sorry, you cut out right at the end there.
Whether the postcards are bilingual.
So we don't send the postcards bilingual. We do have the websites bilingual in both, typically in English and Spanish, often in Punjabi. The reason we don't send the postcard in Spanish, other than possibly saying en español and leading to that website, is you don't know who that postcard is being mailed to. So basically we would have to, double those number of postcards that are sent, that paper that's used, and those costs. But again, once people are pointed to the or once they do go to the areas we point them to, all of that information is in multiple languages.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, so we are just about to get to 7 o'clock. So let's go ahead and wrap up this discussion. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so just really quick. First of all, I want to thank everyone so much for being with us this evening. I'm so very appreciative, and so is the rest of staff, for you to have taken the time on this summer evening to come and share your experiences, your opinions, like your feedback to us, and these great ideas that will help move towards clean transportation in your community. So deeply, deeply appreciate that. And so, again, really quick, as I mentioned earlier, we want to just provide as many opportunities as we can for you to engage with us. Please go ahead and take that survey. If you haven't, you can also talk to us during these future meetings. You can meet with us one-on-one. And there's also an email on the next slide that will show up shortly where you can contact us. So we have upcoming meetings. We'll continue to meet over the next several months, again, on a monthly basis for these community evening meetings. They're going to be held through October on the third Tuesday of each month from 5 to 7. The second funding plan workshop is coming up and will be held on August 31st. And you can all expect a draft plan to be released in late August, at least 10 days ahead of that second funding plan workshop. And we hope to finalize the plan in September, post it in October for the 30-day public review, and we'll go to board in November. Next slide, please. All right, and again, just thank you for your attention, your participation, and excellent discussion that we had tonight. You can reach us through our team's email, which is the Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov. Or you can reach out to me or my co-lead Stephanie, and I will also drop a link in the chat to our listserv if you want to stay connected with us and get messages anytime one of these meetings will be occurring. So thank you so much, everyone. It was such a pleasure chatting with everyone today, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Thank you all.